Every vet knows the dreaded statement that you never want to hear, but you will always hear from some disgruntled client is, you're only in it for the money.
Right.
And it makes me want to pull my hair out because of all the, sacrifice that we go to. And then when you look and compare, what we charge versus what human medicine charges and stuff, we're really like giving away our services essentially.
Right.
And after all that training and all the debt, I don't know when it became not okay for vets to be successful and be comfortable in their salaries
and still do what they love
love and not be criticized for it.
Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Vet Reset. I'm Dr. Sandra Siegel.
And I'm Dr. Whitney Terrell.
How's it going today?
It's good. I'm excited about this topic today.
Today, we're talking about, are you getting paid your worth as a vet? And this is a big topic for us, something that we think about, I think, in vet school a little bit, and then more so when we get into real life and real life starts happening.
And I could say it could be, if we kept things short, a really quick episode where we just answered no.
Yes.
But
we're going to keep going.
We'll get into that why we feel that way.
Yes. So the first thing I think is the obvious one we always hear about, like, why is there such a big gap between veterinarians and human doctors? And
it's a good question.
It's frustrating.
Especially and obviously there's going to be a lot of feelings around this topic. It's kind of a heated subject, and we don't mean to necessarily point fingers or have a lot of hard negative feelings, but it is very frustrating in our field because we do see a lot of these unfortunate side effects, I guess.
Right.
And whenever you go to school, so you're spending, 4 to 5, however long it took for you undergrad, and then you go to a professional school with medical training for another 4 years, you're getting at least 8 years plus, sometimes, for your education in comparison with a lot of other human physicians, and you're making less than half of what they would make.
Yeah.
And we're having to learn about 7 more species than they are, which granted, love my human physicians and nurses, but it's like, where was that disconnect? Where did that go wrong?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting data point from AVMA. So veterinarians face a significant pay gap compared to human doctors despite similar levels of education. The average starting salary for a vet is around $75,000, and the human medical doctor counterpart would be at $200,000.
I wonder what year that study was.
Yeah.
Because, fun fact, back in 2016, I had a friend, obviously I'm from Alabama. She was actually also from Alabama, and I believe her starting salary the first year out was $40,000.
I believe that. Yeah. Cause I think this was pre-COVID.
Oh yeah.
I personally, like when I started, it was, and this was coming out of an internship. And
which also don't get the pay that internships. Whole nother topic.
But the experience, I mean, is everything.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the offer, and this was during a time where it was just difficult to get jobs, and my offer was like $35,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And it was, and I was like, nope. It's definitely worth more than that. And I think that's an important thing of like knowing your worth, and asking for what you believe is right.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes we have difficulty asking for that. When we really should. We have all the value, like we should know our value and be able to ask that.
And I definitely want to touch on that a little bit more. But just to kind of reiterate, leaving vet school or medical school, the differences there. But the student debt, however, very similar between human and veterinary medicine.
Yes.
So that's what makes it so challenging, is that we're starting off at such a negative, debt to income ratio, whereas even though our human physician counterparts have similar school debt, which is, on average around $250,000 of debt. It can be anywhere from 100 to 400, depending on school and
in-state or out-of-state.
In-state, out-of-state, out of country, even. And, both have that similar debt ratio, or both have that similar debt, but they're starting out at a way higher wage. So it's much easier for them to survive, honestly, to function and have a pretty normal life and way of living when they're already getting paid so much more coming out of school than we are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big gap there. I think there are also some things to kind of dive into a little bit there of, what, I think we all know what the difference in that is all about. And it's if, there's medical insurance for most people. So a
lot of vet practices don't even offer insurance too. That's something, thankfully, I think we're getting better at in our industry. But yeah, a lot of times insurance isn't included. So you having to pay, out from that.
Right. Yeah. So having different things that are, that can be offered through your practice is helpful, to get people to, get on board with that. But,
and I think that the financial debt, like when you're leaving school, helps shape your career, or definitely helps make a big impact on what you want to do. So I know we talked about how there are a lot of different options whenever we do graduate veterinary school. If you want more information on that, check out episode 1. Where you are financially or where you are in debt can be a big reason on why you go a certain route in your field, whether it's, I'm, close to $500,000 in debt. How do I earn this back and not have to work until I'm 75? And maybe it's do emergency for a few years to kind of get those bills down a little bit. Yeah. So I think that is a really big thing about how student debt can really shape your career choices, or if you're going to work private practice, if you're going to instead go to a corporate, where they might be able to pay a little bit more because they have more backing.
Government programs too that are offered, like going into USDA or like government sponsored programs that do loan forgiveness along with them. So there's some of those that are available out there. There are some corporates too that do loan, like help you with your loan repayments. So there's some corporate practice that do that. While we're talking about corporate versus private, let's maybe go into a little bit more about that kind of choice. And some of our listeners might be in a position where they're in corporate, want to go to private, or private to corporate, and what are those differences? And
so I have not worked for a corporation before, but I am a partner in my practice, which is a private practice. So it is still possible to own your practice or be a partner in a practice that stays private and is not corporate, but it is difficult. And although it can definitely eventually help you, our practices, they are businesses, and that's a big aspect of it. So you need to, one, either be pretty business savvy or have a person that you can look to as an advisor.
And I think also that's a really important point of, it is a business at the end of the day, and it's okay to have that, like, to think that way. Obviously, in our hearts, we do what we do because we love it. But to me, having that, having the financial piece of it be where you need it to be is freedom. So in your practice, having a good revenue come in is freedom for your staff. It's freedom for you. It's freedom to get the things you need in the practice to help your patients. So it's not a bad word, you know, to
be successful.
To think of it like to be successful, to think of it like a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it is at the end of the day.
I think as vets, whether it's we think about it ourselves or the public has this has it in their mind's eye to where, well, you love animals, you should treat them for free.
Right.
I wish I could.
Right.
And there are so many times that every single vet tech, vet assistant, receptionist has done something to where they've given a client something for free.
Right.
Even if it's a corporate clinic, they probably snuck it in there.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we want to help out our patients and we want to help keep that animal-human bond secure and just be there for them. But at the end of the day, it is a business, and to be able to do those little things every now and then, we do have to charge appropriately for our services.
Right. And that's okay to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's okay to say that. And so on the corporate versus independent practice, so you're in private practice. When I was in practice, I was in corporate practice. So
good. Two different views.
So we have our totally different experiences with that. And I think that on the corporate side, and that actually my story about like getting that low offer was from private practice. And I was like, forget that. I'm going to go for corporate, and I'm going to get the sign-on bonus, and I'm going to get the salary that I'm looking for. Yep. So that's why I went that route. And
that's not a common thing, even nowadays. So typically private practices are going to offer a little less than a corporate practice because they don't have, that backing of a big corporate company. And that's fine. I think you just have to know, to me, salary is huge and it's definitely a big point, but also culture. And so that's a big point too, to remember that, I guess, use caution for those that are doing sign-on bonuses and moving bonuses. And if you do this, then you get this bonus and,
all the shiny things.
And it's like, is there high turnover? Is there, a good culture, or is it a really toxic place? And I think that's something to also keep in mind whenever you are out looking for salaries and like ways that they're going to be compensated.
Right. And I think it's very personal decision how you're driven. If obviously finances, everyone has to think about it, but some more concerned than others. I totally agree with you. I think having the right culture and the right support staff and all of that to be a part of that decision. But I think you're able, if there are listeners out there wanting to switch from one to another, just to look at all like the pros and cons for both of those and what that entails. And it's also not to say that you get paid the most in a corporate and you don't in private. And there's like ownership and all of that. So there's lots of different things you can do with it, but it's kind of looking at the pros and cons list that's right for each individual.
I'm really interested to talk about managing costs and maximizing income in practice. There's Dr. Christine Staten. She is very big for veterinary business. She has like a lot of different talks and courses and stuff that you can take. And she's very good. And she posted a study. I can't remember who the study was conducted by, but it was talking about whether at your practice, if you're thinking about hiring a new vet, or if you should hire more support staff. Yeah. And it is insane. And to those that are out there that are thinking, oh, should I hire a new vet, or do we need a little bit more support staff? Which one would be more profitable for a practice? Studies have shown that having more support staff, whether it be, your licensed techs or your vet assistants, is going to make your practice, it's proven to be more profitable than even just having another vet. You can have that later, but having that support staff is so essential, and it allows you to see more patients.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that workflow through the hospital is
huge.
Yeah. It makes such a big difference. I totally believe that. I think it's really critical to have trained support staff that's going to be allowing you to do more and work smarter, not harder necessarily. So I think that's critical. Let's dive into deeper parts of managing costs and maximizing income in practice, because I think we're all experiencing inflation, and just in general, the industry is moving towards higher cost of care. And, we're having pet owners that are feeling that and maybe not understanding that piece of it. My personal view is that we're trying to get to where we should have been. Yeah. And so like the costs of where they should have been years ago, or we're trying to get there. And now people are feeling that because we were so low before. Yeah. And so there's that piece of it. But
I think because we were also, not only were we so low before, that now we are kind of getting to where, okay, we are charging maybe more appropriately for our services, but inflation and the rest of the financial issues going on has also skyrocketed. And so there's that burden. So then whenever they come, they're like, oh, yeah.
Right.
I'm so frustrated with that. And I understand it can be expensive. There are, things that as pet parents and clients that they can do to help with those expenses. You have certain things like care credit, because most of the time at veterinary practices, you're not going to be able to bill. So having things such as care credit or pet insurance is huge. Or just an emergency fund is what I usually tell people, dedicate so much, whether it's $10 or $50 each month to a emergency fund. That way, whenever you do have to go to the emergency clinic because your dog ate a sock and is going to have surgery, you've got a little bit more cushion.
Yeah.
Because we know it's expensive. But if you compare bills from what we're charging for our patients, who arguably may get more, direct and, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here. But getting very good care, compassionate care, they, compared to human medicine, I mean, the cost difference are astronomical on human medicine. And so, it's,
so there's the insurance piece of it. But there's also options for practices to have like wellness plans, programs that they can take on, and there are options out there for them to incorporate that into their clinics that can help pet owners with that. So, but I think the cost differences from human health to animal health is incredibly wide.
Very.
And it's really an interesting, I don't know where I'm going with this.
Phenomenon.
It's an interesting phenomenon. It is a phenomenon.
And I think a really crazy but important thing that I wish more pet owners knew is that, even though as a veterinary business, veterinary practices have a very narrow profit margin.
Yeah.
So, I mean, every vet knows the dreaded statement that you never want to hear, but you will always hear from some disgruntled client is, you're only in it for the money.
Right.
And it makes me want to pull my hair out, makes me want to cry, throw things, whatever, because of all the, sacrifice that we go to. And then when you look and compare, what we charge versus what human medicine charges and stuff, we're really like giving away our services essentially.
Right.
And after all that training and all the debt that we're in, that we're just trying to, decrease our debt and start living debt free. Only about
having a successful business.
Right. It is okay. I don't know when it became not okay for vets to be successful and be comfortable
Right.
in their salaries
and still do what they love
and
not,
still do what they
yeah.
love and not be criticized for it.
Right.
I don't know. It's a double standard or what, but it's unfair. It's unfair for the veterinary profession, especially when compared to other businesses. I mean, our profit margins are usually only 10 to 15%, which is pretty low
it's
for a
lean.
business.
Yeah, very lean. And the investment that goes into your team is a lot too. When you have turnover, that's really difficult. And
having to find and train employees, and there's high turnover rates, especially for our support staff, but because of burnout and whatever, even vets as well. So it's just, how do you make people enjoy what they do and stay? You got to compensate them fairly. And then, of course, good culture and things like that. Options for insurance is huge, I think, nowadays, for sure. So.
Yeah. How do you go into the room and talk to your clients about pricing, and how do you manage through those challenges?
So a lot of times I put it off on my assistants.
They're so good at it.
I feel like they are good at it. But also I think it does kind of help to have someone else discuss finances that's not the veterinarian, to make it less so like we're going to be the bad guys that was charging for this. Obviously, we're not. We're just charging appropriately for our services. But having that little in between is, I think, helpful. But I've also just talked with clients, and you got to remember, I'm from Alabama, so our mean family income is super low. And even, if we were maybe one of the more pricier places in the city, not necessarily saying that we are, but if we were, when you compare, I know I have friends elsewhere in the United States and other places across the world, that when I'm like, hey, like, how much would this be at your practice? Astronomical difference. And I'm like, my clients would never be able to either afford that, or they just wouldn't do it. So like, cause it's, the cost of living and the way of living and stuff where I am is so different from where they are. So that's a big thing too, to where I've got to think about that a lot of times. But yeah, when going over it, if there's ever any issues, I typically just say, this is for these medications. This is for my experience, my time doing this procedure, medications, so on and so forth.
I think it's really important also to go into talking to your clients not feeling bad about it, and going in thinking that, like, this is the best treatment plan I have to offer. And after that, we talk about what they can do, and then we work from it from there. But and also training your staff to also not try to not feel bad about that. Like, this is our prices. We have them for a reason. It's not, they're not overinflated. Yeah, it is hard. But for, that, to try to remove that emotion from it, because it is what that is. And then we'll work with the client.
Absolutely.
After that.
And I think every person, not just vets, but everyone that works in a vet clinic is going to feel guilt at some way or another because they are probably not going to be able to afford this type of standard of care. But in the end, like you said, it's business. We have to keep our lights on. We have to feed ourselves and take care of our families and pay our own house bills and whatnot. So, we do have to go in and try to compartmentalize. This is that one thing that I think that I feel pretty good about is I will go in and make my top recommendations. Hey, this is what Fluffy has. I would really like to do XYZ. This is how much this would be. If we are unable to do that, I can definitely get you a better estimate to work within your budget and talk about, how much they have to work with, and I love it. I actually really prefer, and I had this happen last week. Someone came in and their pet was sick, and I said, "Oh yes, I found this, and let me go get you an estimate for that." And he said, "Okay, I'm just letting you know I have $100."
Right.
And I was like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
Okay. But it's great because then I was like, okay, how am I going to best use that money,
right,
but still take care of this pet to the best of both mine and the, client's abilities.
Right.
So I think that's really important, and something that they don't necessarily teach you at vet school on how to do that. They teach the quote unquote gold standard, which I hate the term. Right. Thankfully, we're going to standard of care now.
Yes.
And I think there's other terms out there. And this was one thing that I had talked about in my talk. I had given some Auburn students about how in vet school you're taught this is what you do for this problem and this is what you do for that problem.
Right.
And in the real world, it's not like that. And it might have started out that way at one point in time, but then, like you said, inflation took off or COVID happened. There are a lot of variables that affect how much people can do for their pet, and it doesn't mean that they don't love them.
Right.
Everybody that has a pet typically has a pet because they want to and they love it, and that human animal bond is sacred to them, and they're doing the best they can. So just being able to work within someone's means to give the best outcome possible is something that we have to continue to work on daily in all practices.
Yeah. And it's kind of that thinking on the fly of like, okay, what's the one thing I need to get to this diagnosis or to get to, the best outcome for that pet? Like to really be thinking on your feet. And I think, when we talk about having your staff to be helpful with that as well, like when they're understanding also, like I feel like a lot of times what would happen too is our like a tech would go in and talk about the treatment plan and they would come back and be like, I think that they're not going to have, they will know this. They can read the room. They know the situation, or the client will tell them directly. And I think that's okay. Like we just have that to work with and go from there. So related to, working as a vet in practice and in private and corporate, I think a really important thing to talk about is negotiating your salary.
Absolutely.
And going back to that theme of knowing your worth and being proud of that and standing up for yourself. And I think that's something that we as vets, again, probably didn't learn in school. There's also probably some cultural pieces that factor into that, and probably some male-female pieces that factor into that. So anything that you have gone through, like, I know you just got partner, so
so I mean, it's awkward. I feel like, I don't know if it's necessarily because of it's just awkward to talk money for certain people, and then some people don't care. I do know that typically as women, we usually are, I feel like, had more this reserved. More reserved and taught to be more appreciative, more grateful for what we're given, instead of...
And not necessarily boasting about yourself.
Don't, why would you boast about it? That's, you know what I'm saying? So I think there's definitely some cultural aspects and some different... Societal, yes. Things that go into it. So Taylor Swift had a really good interview that she talked about the differences in the music industry, but I think it's also evident in all of professions, I feel like, to where when men do something, it's strategic. But when a woman does the same thing, it's calculated. Or men are allowed to react, but with women, it's only overreact. And I love that. And I mean, Taylor Swift's awesome for so many different reasons, but I loved that because I feel like, we have these societal norms that we've just unfortunately have become a part of. And so it's hard for us to ask for things that we may very much deserve, but because we don't want to seem like a bitch. And, we are supposed to be thankful and grateful and stuff. And it sucks. And we shouldn't do that to ourselves because a lot of times men, they don't care that if they're going to be thought of in a certain way, they just want to get paid. And I think it's a very emotional thing for us. And, because maybe us as women, we may feel more emotion towards it and want to be seen in a certain light that we don't want to change that, just trying to better our lives and salary.
Yeah. And I think there's that taking ownership of it and of your own sort of destiny in that way. And I think some of the, we have a stat here from PayScale that 70% of employees who ask for raises receive them.
Yes.
Which shows the power of that negotiation. And I think also going into a negotiation isn't, you just kind of wing it and go in cold. You have to kind of prepare.
Yes.
And think about the things that you've achieved, leadership, additional work that you've done, or
why you deserve that raise.
Yeah, like maybe there's a bunch of concentrations that you focus more on, and are the person who loves dermatology in your clinic and whatever that is. So having all of that ready when you have that conversation is really important. And going in it unapologetically.
Yes.
I think just going in and being like, you don't have to be mean or,
no.
You go in like very professional and like, these are the things I've done. This is what I think I deserve. And
this is why I feel like I deserve this.
Yeah. So I think that's a really, a key thing is going in prepared. And then I think you feel less nervous about it because you have that preparation instead of just going in like you have all the backing.
Yes. And I think it's good to have, and I think it's good to have that printed out or, in an email or something to where you have something to reference.
Put those bullet points in.
Put those bullet points in. Like, this was my production from last year and I'm paid only salary. But if I were paid pro sal, this is what my thing would be.
Yeah, know your numbers.
Know your numbers. Very important. Yes. Know your numbers. Know how you are doing in your practice. And if you don't
get them, ask for them.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's lots of ways that can be achieved.
Yeah, so. I think you said it. The biggest thing is, yes, it's going to be scary and it's uncomfortable and awkward, but know your worth. And be unapologetic to ask for what you deserve.
Yeah, and it kind of goes to the old adage of, if you don't ask, it'll for sure be a no.
That is correct. You will never know if you don't ask. The worst they can say is no.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Vet Reset. We hope you enjoyed our conversation. We certainly talked about the big elephant in the room, money.
We hope you are inspired to unapologetically know your worth, reduce your debt, manage costs, maximize your income, and negotiate your salary.
If this resonated with you, please consider subscribing and following us on socials. We appreciate your feedback, so feel free to leave us a rating and a comment to keep this conversation going.
Don't forget to share this episode with other veterinary friends who are eager to learn and grow. And remember, don't be afraid to keep chasing those big wins for you and your practice, and reset how we think about money.